All right, in this video, we want to dive into the topic of conversion tracking and how we should get familiar with its parameters, what tasks it performs, and how we can use it. For the topic of conversion tracking, the first thing I need to define is what conversion is. Our conversion might be defined as anything based on the type of our business. You might even consider the loading of a PRT age as a conversion, depending on your business goals. Let's talk about conversion and how to set it up. What we have in analytics is known as a goal. Guys, we define conversion in Google Ads as the same goal, essentially. In Google Ads, it defines our target and the conversion of our customer for us. A conversion is not just an empty event, let me tell you that. Although it might be of the event type, a conversion is not just an empty event. Why? Because you set up events with the intention, for example, in your analytics, to track something specific. You might say, hey, event X happened. For instance, you might want to track the amount of support or something similar. Playing a video might not be the main goal on that page or for that business. You want to see which one, for example, has more clicks or views than the video itself. You want to track it to analyze what is happening. This is the event. But your goal might be a call or a purchase and something is happening. Therefore, in the context of Google, we equate conversion with that same goal to observe it. However, something is happening, and from a definitional perspective, I am viewing this as the same. Numerically, such an event might not have occurred, and it's natural. To clarify this topic for you, I will address it further. I need to talk to you about attribution and other related topics. So, we are supposed to do conversion tracking, meaning we examine how much has converted into our goal from Google's perspective. At this point, I should tell you one of the reasons. The difference that exists in this matter, I will elaborate more on it. In the next videos, and even in this video, the point is that Google is self-centered, and what we want to examine in this way is saying, sir, we want to define it in such a way that you say, sir, what was my impact on that goal? Well, which we will see under the name of conversion, and after that even the conversion rate. Examining the inputs that have come solely from Google Ads and only want to assess their own impact, remember, Google Ads is self-centered and only wants to evaluate its own impact without considering your other channels. Let's write down these 6 terms, guys. 1, the Geneva factor is this too. And 1 is the attribution models. You might now have a big question mark above your head wondering what these are. For example, we will open them one by one to see what these 3 core topics are. If we know them, we can make our definitions and indeed our reviews and analyses more logical. What we are discussing, as you can see on the slide, is that the point marked with a star is where we say, okay, our goal was achieved, our conversion happened. Your conversion might be, for example, that a call was made. For now, just keep this title in mind. We analyze conversions based on the events happening on the website. We are not dealing with app conversions at the moment. And even, for example, consider a call or call extension when it's made. And I'll address that later as well when a call extension is being used. It doesn't see it as an event that has occurred on your website. Let me tell you right here, and I'll mention it again later, that when the call extension is clicked, if your goal is to receive a call, that goal is marked as achieved. However, note that when the user clicks on your call extension button, they haven't actually visited the website. Well, when this happens, the user hasn't visited the website, so a session doesn't occur. This should trigger a light bulb in your mind, meaning that nothing trackable on the website happens either. So, what I'm talking about now instead of a conversion is something else. Well, it's something that makes us happy, and when it happens, and it occurs on the website, so this is the first option. Secondly, guys, the moment a conversion happens, all the analyses start there. Those circles and the words written underneath them are actually the search terms that the user has searched for. And now, I can even say it like this. Suppose this is a search event that happened once, for example, on such and such a date, and between the dates, you see I've placed a series of arrows. Guys, this is another interaction where the user has entered my website through it. Meaning, by clicking on a troll banner, they have entered my website. Directly coming to my website, what does that mean? It means they just typed the URL of my website and entered it. For example, they bookmarked it and entered my website. Or organic, what does that mean? It means SER, SEO results. Or, as I said, a part of the Google results on our SERP page, where I mentioned the maximum top chart and bottom chart. And then there are other results alongside it. As a result, the organic that you have on the SERP. Well, in the Google results that you have, these are your organic results. In fact, SEO is happening when it gets clicked and enters your website. That result is organic. And for organic, it is being solidified. So then, in this section, I have the perspective that when someone wants to convert for me, they have already shown a series of behaviors. From now on, we will know those circles as ad interactions. What does that mean? Then it means they perform a search, see our ad, have an interaction, and also enter my website, right? That interaction is important to me, and the ad interaction is happening now. I want to open the conversion window for you right at this point. So, what happens in the conversion window? How do we define the conversion window like this? We say, okay, a conversion happened. How far back should I go to review and look at the impacts before this to see what events occurred? You see, I've put two lines, 30 days before and 20 days before, right? From the point of conversion, I go back up to 20 days and might consider a conversion window. Someone else might consider up to 30 days back. This is the impact, right? We want to consider impactful things like this. Imagine it like a football game, although not exactly football. Imagine that a play happens and they all come and hug the goalkeeper or the person who scored the final goal, and the important point is, or if they want to say someone became the top scorer, they don't even consider the person who defended. But the reality is that in that event, the impact of these actions should be evaluated. I need to attach this goal to whom and so on. Therefore, the conversion window creates this definition in my mind which says my conversion point is to review how far back to see who and what events have influenced this goal, have influenced this conversion. Well, and this is being defined by the folks at Google. So, I need to think beforehand whether the search behavior of my user is multi-step or not. Well, this is where the concept of conversion delay also comes into play. What does that mean? It means from my conversion point, how far back should I really go? And how much delay has there been from this traction until it becomes a conversion? For example, I look and see that on this date, the person has started searching for hair transplant. They came in with a specific keyword, then saw a banner from me somewhere else, let's say on an internal website, and clicked to come in. Then they had another search and clicked on hair transplant to come in, and then they searched for permanent hair transplant and came in. We see the same pattern everywhere. Then they came directly after some time here, then searched for hair transplant prices, then came in organically and converted. Well, guys, it might even happen that there's a gap here. For example, I'm saying, well, there might be a gap. I'm observing my user's behavior, guys. Sometimes, like repairmen, a user encounters an issue and wants to perform a search, and then they might come and click, and the conversion continues. Well, that conversion for me is the contact there. I look at it as a single step there, so I don't need to go back and look at a large range before that. So guys, I need to choose the conversion window based on the daily behavior of the user up to the conversion point and how complex the user's behavior has been. Why? Because if I choose a small window, I won't see the impact of the others. The impact of that forward, the impact of that defender, the impact of that midfielder. Now, I'm not even into football, so I might say their names wrong. I remember when I got nutmegged by my friends, I quit right then and there, and I haven't played football since. It's not one of my interests. And at that point, I want to ignore the behavior and impact of these factors. I need to actually consider whether I should regard these as impactful or not. Well, based on the type of campaign, this becomes a bit more complex. For example, I want to tell you that if we want to go into dispersed campaign models, someone who clicked 30 days ago, for instance, there's so much market noise that the impact of that individual is no longer present in the user's mind. And if I sense that, please, it becomes meaningless. Well, so regarding the banner, I say if its impact, for example, I don't see these conversion windows as long in banner ads, I see them shorter. In Google's model, I'm saying this, but in the search model, it differs from behavior. The user searches because they constantly have an act in their mind. Their need is shouting, and they perform a search and come in. So, I see the conversion window this way based on the conversion. Well, how long does it take? And it also has different interactions that need to happen before it converts. For example, I look at it over 30 days, and I see that the user has performed 5 searches. So, I might consider it a bit larger, like if they searched a year ago. I take that into account. But considering something from a year ago, I don't even remember what I had for dinner last night. But looking back a year has an impact. It has an impact. That density of 3, well, we ourselves know that it's meaningless. So therefore, we need to consider something in between that makes sense with its conversion label, which we will examine, and we should not ignore the impact of these factors in between. We should see it with real engagement. Not just mention something from a year ago and still claim to be influenced by it and examine that too. Well, because if I write here, if I take the conversion window, for example, up to 5 days before, I see 2 events happening. But from Google's perspective, it says only 1 event has occurred. Pay attention to my words. From Google's perspective, it says 1 event has occurred if I take it up to this point. Why is Google so self-centered and doesn't consider others? It says, "Sir, only the last interaction matters to me." Here too, if I only consider it up to this point, we practically haven't had more than 1 last interaction. If I set it for 30 days, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 ad interactions. If I set it for 20 days, we had 1, 2, 3 ad interactions. So what happens to direct and organic? Google doesn't consider others and is essentially sanctioning its data for itself. Let me tell you something right here, guys. Because of this issue, we consider conversion tracking in Google Ads solely for optimizing Google Ads campaigns and work with it. For those of you who go for post-analysis and look into analytics, don't make a mistake, guys. This is the point. In analytics, based on your goals, events, etc., you come and compare and optimize your entry channels, which also has its own specific analyses. However, in Google Ads, we perform conversion tracking solely for optimizing Google Ads itself. Why? Because the impact of other channels like direct, organic, and banner ads is considered. It ignores them, like social media and referrals, so it only accounts for itself. This means that in the conversion window, I only see my effective points in Google Ads as 3 if I have set it for 20 days, and 4 if I have set it for 30 days. If I set it for 4 or 5 days, I only see 1 effective point. So for 3 conversions, it's late. We can define the conversion window. This initial definition of the conversion window means that the rest of the dates are not important to me. I only want to examine the effective points within that range from the point where we hit the conversion to the point where the conversion window wants to see it, up to this point only. Well, anything before that is not important to it. So it's very important that we have a correct understanding of the conversion window. We shouldn't set it so short that we miss examining previous interactions, nor should we set it unnecessarily large and capturing only momentary behavior that converts at that moment. Like the examples I gave you, for instance, in training children, this window should be larger because the user's behavior is investigative. This involves researching different models to reach the conclusion that we should consider a 6-month window or even a 3-month one, okay? So because it becomes a conversion window, from that point, the conversion window opens up to the point where the conversion window size becomes, for example, 20. It considers 30 for the conversion window as well. I will also explain the topic of conversion actions here in relation to what I'm saying, and then you know about the attribution models we have, which are called conversion actions. There are 2 topics within it. Our conversion actions can be primary actions or secondary actions. What does that mean? They emphasize that all metrics on the Google dashboard are being defined and explained. Guys, we consider conversion action like this. Remember, in the audience targeting discussion, we said we have something called target that comes and narrows it down and is important for it. And there's a part called observation. Guys, you couldn't take observation larger than your targeting in the audience targeting discussion, right? What did observation say? It said, I won't make your target smaller, but the part where you have observation with me, you take it from me and I will have a separate view on it. Well, in primary action and secondary action, exactly this topic is raised in. First, it categorizes itself. You see here now it has named it goal Barbara, which is the same as convergenimus. It categorizes them. For example, it says, sir, for instance, if I see a thank you page, the loading of your thank you page might be your conversion. Well, you say this type is goal, and my conversion type is categorized as purchase. Now, let's look at this difficulty as well. Or, for example, you say, sir, contact, form, for instance. I consider all of these as contact. The contact category, well, if you have an online store, it might be important for you to have user contact. But practically, what makes you happy and satisfied? It's the purchase, right? Think about it right here. I want to examine what the user's action has been for me, what the rest of the user's call to action has been for me, and I want to review that too. But it's not my main goal. Guys, what concept does this evoke for you? What do you remember in analytics? Did you remember goals and events now? Guys, practically secondary action. Well, secondary action. It's the same event that is important to you, but I don't want to do my optimization based on that secondary action. I want to do it based on my primary action, which is what here. Did you understand what I'm saying? So primary actions are the goals that are my main objective. Well, the secondary action is kind of that event, although, pay attention, it still carries the name of conversion. Meaning, if it's supposed to be passed from analytics, it's passing the goal. But you say, sir, it's secondary for me. Right? There, for example, you might say in analytics, I want the purchase for me. I want to give the main goal for me. For example, there you might review your goals separately, or you might even create a custom report in analytics to review it. Guys, the things I'm mentioning, like setting goals, events, etc. You can check out in those free webinars available on the website hdmarketing.org. I don't want to open it up for you in this video. We've talked about it elsewhere. Check out that webinar for more details of it and review. So, in my mind, secondary in terms of weight and importance went to layer 2. Now, what is the action that Google is taking from these? Guys, practically, if you want to consider primary and secondary in another model, I'll tell you about the targeting model and that observation in terms of importance for Google itself. You see it being used, but where is it important? I'll tell you now. Google defines primary action and secondary action for us like this. It says, look, if I have to, I'll say it slowly so you can write it down. If I have to, use a bidding strategy. Who's learning? And optimization methods are actually for the campaign that you are entrusting to Google itself. It wants to perform it based on conversion, like maximize conversions, like conversion value, and finally like that. Enhanced CPC I told you about, where I said it tries to adjust conversions and such to distribute your budget. I will talk about bidding strategies and automated ones in their place. It says, sir, I consider that conversion for optimization so that you as a primary set it, meaning if I want to optimize it, for example, Google itself says this, and I want to learn it, I will consider that conversion that you defined as primary. Well, now I have brought it forward, and I will open it up, and I will say right here that you see your primary actions in the conversion column. We went on, and I will show it to you. But you can see your secondary actions and secondary conversions combined with the primary and the all conversion column. I will talk more about it in my dashboard. But for now, I just wanted to explain the primary and secondary levels to you. Google considers primary conversions for optimizing automated bidding strategies based on conversions, while secondary ones are there for you to use as you see fit. I might tell you some things about them. But in terms of weight and other factors, I have somehow defined them so that they seem like that event. We also have something called conversion value, which you can set in 3 possible ways. We will go through all the parameters one by one. Conversion value. In the first mode says use the same value for each conversion. I want to use a term that you should study about, although at the end of the course we will explain the parameters. Well, when it says use the same value for each conversion, there are 2 scenarios. Either the conversion that is being defined for you is not a purchase, for example, it's a lead, or a form, I don't know, a call. Well, based on your funnel analysis or gift analysis, you make a flashback, calculate a reverse conversion rate, and determine the value of your lead, for example. The value that your lead is creating for you guys, here I don't mean cost, I mean the value per lead. What does that mean for me? For example, suppose you obtained 100 leads. Well, the form is filled out. From those 100 forms, let's say I'm selling a course. For example, 10 people came and completed their purchase. I had 100 subscribers and 10 made a purchase. What is my conversion rate? You always divide the bottom by the top. Regarding the leads, I'm saying 10 out of 100, which is 10%. Right? You had a 10% conversion rate here. Now suppose from these 10 purchases, for example, you earned 100 million tomans. Look, I'm talking about order value, meaning the value it has created for you. Now, if I want to relate this to the leads that have occurred, for example, I'm saying, so those 10, for instance, came offline and made a purchase. It's an example. I had 100 leads. How much income did it generate? 100 million tomans. Practically, how much value does each lead have for you? It seems like each of your leads, on average, generates 1 million tomans for you in terms of value. Well, and if at this point, for example, suppose a website that offers hair transplants is providing this here, as I gave an example of currency, or for instance, a website like ours, just as an example, registers. For example, registers a request, it comes to the website and registers, or even calls, and I count this and say, take these 2 as a weekly wage. Now I want to give the conversion value, the value that each lead on average has for me in terms of data. Extracted from you, well, I get it and I know it. I say, sir, practically every lead creates a training number for me. Well, here I use this value. It has another model too. So I don't have the purchaser here yet. It has another model too, which in Islam is called the average purchase registration, AOV, average order value. Well, when does this make sense, guys? When you have sales and you are issuing various invoices. Well, the products you sell, for example, the services or tasks you have in between are similar to each other. Their price range is similar to each other. Well, here you don't know how to handle them one by one. So what do? Right? It says I calculate an AOV, which means the average purchase profit. What does that mean? It means I look at the invoices issued with me. For example, one is 10, one is 20, one is 5. For instance, one is 8 AF. I take an average and call it AOV. You might want to use the same value for each conversion and set your AOV, because I'm dividing it among these. Here, it's been purchased and you see it online. So, we allocate that to your AOV. This becomes the case for 2 scenarios, but for 3, it can be done. Below, it also says, do not use a value for this conversion action. It might say, I don't have its value or data, or I don't want it. I just want it to count for me. For example, I want to call them currently analyzing up to this point. For instance, you might click on this. I often do, because the volume of conversions here is important for me. I want to give control to the marketing team that is working with the same group I'm working with, or we handle this part ourselves, or if we do it ourselves. Use the value from analytics. Guys, this is a situation where you activate the e-commerce model on your analytics when you set it up. It automatically passes the value of each purchase it makes. However, guys, there's a catch with using Riel. You see the option? Use the same currency as in analytics. Veshe. For example, suppose your dashboard is set to dollars and there's no Riel option. What do? They say, okay, we'll treat Rials as equivalent to dollars and move forward. Or, we'll treat Tomans as equivalent to Rials and proceed. That's how it works over there. This issue exists with Rial and Toman, but if you have an international campaign, then it's all in dollars. You can use that e-commerce logic. Why? Because when I treat Reals as dollars, when it passes, this snowball effect and conversion value go through, for example, with Lira. The conversion value is much higher than the percentage you initially estimated, which might not be apparent. For example, Rial to Lira might be such that every 1800 Tomans equals 1 Lira, or 1700 Tomans equals 1 Lira. But here, you wrote it as $1,700. And this is when everything gets mixed up. Therefore, I don't use this conversion. In this situation, in Iran, you might not do this. But in foreign models, you might, because their currency is defined. Well, or it says do not use the same value. So you understood these values. Value refers to the currency that creates the conversion. You might call these initial ones when you have at least some leads. If you don't have them, naturally, you will use do not use the value. We also have something that is completely opposite in 2 parts in this step. While setting up the conversion, even though it's restricted, I am defining it. I will also discuss conversion delay, conversion window, and conversion attribution. He says, suppose a user comes to your site through Google Ads and makes a conversion, or comes through any other means, and previously also came through Google Ads. If the user hasn't come through Google Ads, they practically haven't had an ad interaction to attribute it to. So, they consider it this way. He says, everyone, if your goal is, for example, let's say you have a series of articles, but the person has to subscribe, or for example, we are watching this, but the person has to subscribe. Well, I have defined that as a conversion. If I have defined the subscription, and my user comes and subscribes 800 times or logs in, for example, those who say, enter your mobile number once, get a password, whether it's for login or subscription, it's the same. If they do such a thing, is it important for you 500 times? Well, no. Or if they come and mistakenly fill out a form twice, is it important for you? No. Or if they press the call button twice in that situation, is it important for you? No. Well, of course, in this case, I say I will set a system for it, and for the call button, put it aside. Don't think about the call button right now. Put it aside, because I want to create a scenario for you. It might get complicated, but that's okay. In situations where you see signups, for example, when you want to collect leads, or consider the conversion of a lead, if a person doesn't become a lead 500 times, then I set the conversions to 1. I say, sir, count it once. Even if they make a mistake twice, count it once. In what situation do we offer an incentive? You offer an incentive when each part of the conversion has a value for you Like a purchase, like buying. At that time you say, sir, I set its count to every. That's that. Click to conversion window. A new term has now been added to the conversion window. Let me explain it to you right here so you don't get confused. We have something called a conversion window, which I mentioned. It's about how far back from the point of conversion we can see its impacts in search ads. Practically, the click in the conversion window is important for it, meaning from the moment it hits conversion, how many clicks it actually gets, it starts its traction with you. So, therefore, from the time it actually clicks, I'm talking about the click in the conversion window. We also have something else, 2 other models, both one for video and one for banner, which I'll just mention so you know. We have one called view through conversion window. Guys, what is view through conversion window? It means the banner was seen, but not clicked on. And Google counts this, okay? But how much is the impact of the conversion window for viewing? Certainly, it is not as broad as the behavior in search. Why? Because its impact is less. Meaning, when you see a banner, how long does its effect last on you? Therefore, this time is shorter. So I consider a smaller conversion window when I want to go for banners. Pay attention, but if they click, it comes into the click conversion window. This is the click point that is being evaluated, right? But be aware and informed. Whether in a video or a banner, if they only see it and this interaction doesn't have a click, you can define a conversion window for it. However, in the 3HS model, we don't have such a thing. It gets an impression, and eventually, when it clicks, it comes into the impression, but it doesn't count here. Yeah? In the 3HS model, the click in the conversion window counts these interactions, right? Right? And ultimately, it models that are specified you should consider in the settings. The attribution model of that format was the third one I mentioned, which I will explain to you guys. What does the attribution model say? It says even if I hit a conversion, for example, you saw it in 30 days. Well, to whom should I attribute a conversion that happened here? Pay attention to what I said. To whom should I attribute it? What does that mean? It means to which ad interaction? In parentheses, it doesn't concern other sources like direct and others to the website. It only considers itself. Suppose in 30 days there were 4 interactions and we saw them together. I should say for one conversion that the last one had an effect. Should I attribute it to this one or should I divide it among all of them and say it was the first one? Should I say, sir, the first one or the last one had more impact? Or the further it came, the more its impact increased, and so on. So, the attribution model is being determined by us for Google, where I need to decide whether to divide this one conversion or assign it to one interaction or to whom it is better to attribute it. Or to which ad interaction should I attribute it? No. Guys, look at the attribution models. I'm talking about them. We have position-based, time decay, linear, first click, last click, and data-driven models. So based on the conversion window, it looks at these interactions and asks, to whom should I attribute this? Just one, like last click or first click. Should I divide it like dated revenue based on my own learning to attribute which one was closer to the conversion? Did it perform a search? Time decay based on how much closer the point of conversion gets within the conversion window? Should I give more weight to those interactions that are closer to the conversion? Position-based means the first and last are more important, but also allocate some amount to the ones in the middle. This will be explained further later. So the attribution model is about whom to attribute it to. Let's delve a bit deeper into the attribution model in Google. Guys, attribution models are a set of rules that Google itself defines, and we also have a say in them. What does that mean? It means we determine based on what criteria it should attribute. As I just told you, some of these attributions are rule-based, like linear, time decay, last click, first click, and position based, right? This is exactly what we're talking about now. And if you want to explore it further, let's open it up a bit more. I'll explain the definitions now, and then we'll go back to the example we saw together to discuss who we should attribute it to. Who is the last one? And to whom should the points be attributed? Parfait. Then we'll also look at the dashboard together. What? So, if you set it to last click, what does it do, guys? It says, sir, I will give all the credit for this one conversion to the last ad interaction. I attribute those circles to the last ad interaction that existed in the conversion window for Google. So, if I want to go back to what we saw together, if we consider a 30-day period the last click, meaning the last ad interaction, within this 30-day period comes back from the conversion point, it doesn't count the person. It says I had 4 ad interactions. Who was the last one? Pay attention to what happens to our planting cost. I'll say my sentence and then elaborate more on it. Google comes and says what? It says this is a conversion that happened here today. For example, I come and attribute one conversion to this ad interaction, that the search was for the price of a hair transplant now. This search term might be a keyword that actually fired. Let's see what search term it was. We can now, say which keyword fired it. Ultimately, the layer I want to see is to whom we are attributing it, because we can see its search term, its keyword, as well as its campaign, ad group, and ad. Based on the ad that was clicked, it is attributed accordingly. The keyword that fired it, as well as its campaign, and so on. The ad that was clicked on this website is attributed accordingly, the keyword that fired it, as well as its campaign, and so on. It attributes this to the keyword, which is now within a specific ad, within a specific campaign. Pay attention, it attributes it to this. What does that mean? Does it mean that the one it's tracking today is assigned to that keyword or not? This is the point to grasp. Guys, if your lack of traction is at this point, and within the conversion, I know I'm seeing the lack of traction. This conversion won't be attributed today. Google Ads doesn't deal with analytics. What does Google say? It says, on what date did this event occur? I take this one and attach it to that date, to that keyword. This is where the discrepancies I mentioned might occur. Our analysis is about why the conversion is recorded today but doesn't show up for me today. If 5 days have passed and it came from organic traffic, it says, look, my ad interaction is important. My ad interaction happened 5 days ago with this keyword, with this ad, in this campaign, in this ad group. Here it says, so I assign one conversion to this friend of ours on this date. What does that mean? Does it mean that this data is being passed back? Yes. The conversion in that conversion path you're talking about, you have specific impact points. That's why this data is being refined. As the conversion path is being tracked, it progresses for those conversions. Here's the point where they tell you if your user's behavior involves multiple ad interactions, which we will look at and analyze together, you should always have a conversion window range, even if the data isn't complete yet. If today you're analyzing for the past 30 days, ignore one conversion window and look at the period before it. Why? Because that data has matured and no changes will occur in it anymore, since my focus is on the past 30 days. Well, this data won't mature anymore before that, and this data is still raw. I prefer not to analyze this point unless I observe user behavior, indicating that practically at the last point, meaning there was one ad interaction in this range, and then another with a significant gap. That last point becomes important to me. I focus on scenarios like this. which I'll explain if you find yourself in this situation. You can see in the same interval the deletion of ad interactions, and here you had a delay. We observe from Google's perspective that there was a delay until the conversion happened, because it went through other sources, mediums, or channels and completed the conversion. And here I see a delay. Look, this is my delay, and ultimately this conversion is attached here. If I see the conversion delay in this situation, if I see that my conversion delay is short, meaning it is close to this point, and the user's behavior is not complicated or multi-step, then it doesn't really matter if I say there's a conversion window, and leave it empty in my analysis. I can analyze it right here because it is finalizing at that moment, and the data is maturing and coming up, and there is no specific conversion delay. Therefore, in the click list, it asks what you're giving. Sir, I come and assign that credit to it. I told you an important point. Don't forget it. This delay was important. As I mentioned, we need to examine it in the dashboard to see how it is done. And finally, don't forget that this data might not be fully matured in your conversion data. Therefore, don't forget to go back and review the previous window if you have ignored the conversion. Because you need to see if it has matured, otherwise you will make a big mistake in your analyses, guys. And finally, when the gentleman says the default attribution model used by Google is the last click, it assigns it to the last one. What does it say in the first click? It says, sir, give all the credit for that one within the conversion window to the first ad interaction. If you consider that 30-day window we are currently discussing, it would assign it to the planting, and it hurts because the first ad interaction was within its conversion window. It says, wow. If the discussion involves brand building and brand awareness, it says, sir, of course. Remember that it's not about the brand, but in cases where this attribution model is such that the first impact is important, well, and the initial impact was significant, where you showed your strength to the other party, well, there you go and set it to first click. Well, and in this case, your goals shift towards brand awareness. And because this situation is more prevalent in banner models, and these stories, it's not in the search model. What does time decay say? Now I will show it in a chart form. It says, sir, I give the most credit, USD, based on the time interval difference between these ad interactions and the conversion point. I value the last ones more, yois, than the middle ones, yosnos, and gradually decrease the value of the initial ones, yo, to reach the conversion over that interval. So, time decay says, sir, its impact increases over time and the last interaction is the most sensitive. Well, if your promotion is time sensitive, use this model, guys. For example, suppose you want to register for a course, say in WordPress Plus, or a database course, and you say, sir, this is the promotion. You say, sir, we started the advertisements 10 days ago. Naturally, as it gets closer to the deadline points, this increases. So those final interactions that are approaching the deadline and you have a limited opportunity to use, for example, a discount code, those final interactions we see have a greater impact on conversion. In such a situation, we come and consider this as user behavior. Well, we take time decay into account. In the position-based model, what does it say? It says, guys, I allocate 40% to the last interaction, 40% to the first interaction, and the remaining 20% is divided among the middle interactions, right? And I assign it to them. In this case, guys, these first impressions become very important. Usually in the model of campaigns that have several elements, like 3 display ads, etc., you analyze it on a macro level, and you might use the position-based model. Right? And finally, the linear model, which I think is the most commonly used. I personally focus more on the linear model and do this more because I'm observing user behavior as well. What does it do? It says, sir, I keep emphasizing the conversion window. from the point where the conversion is made to before the conversion window, I come and divide that one conversion among the ad interactions equally. Okay? What does that mean? It means, sir, if you consider a 30-day period, for example, the one we discussed together, it allocates that conversion equally to those 4 keywords, to those 4 ad interactions, each getting 25%. If it was in position 20, it would say, sir, 14% for this one, 14% for this one, 20% for that one, and for the 2 in the middle, okay? 10% for this one, 10% for this one. In linear, it allocates 25%, 25%, 25%, and 25% of the conversion. It doesn't forget, it processes these and passes them to those points where the ad interaction occurred within the conversion. At the moment of conversion, for example, it adds them from 5 days ago, 10 days ago, 15 days ago, 25 days ago. Therefore, this data is being refined and coming up. Pay close attention to this, okay? This is also a linear model. We also have a data-driven model where it predicts based on user behaviors. The data-driven attribution model, or DDA model, does this. For example, DDA doesn't know the experience, but it has certain requirements. It says, oh, there should have been 300 ad interactions and 300 conversions in the past 30 days. It learns, analyzes, and identifies overlaps, then determines based on conversions. It essentially says what the conversion path is. It examines the journey as previously outlined to see which ones were likely more frequent. It learns, and from then on, it distributes these differently to various keywords or different attributes. Well, it learns this. Personally, I don't use it much, although I'm very interested in it. But my habit is that when I don't understand what Google is doing and it just says it's predictive and forecasting, I can't really trust it. So let's take a look at this. Yarode in the first click. If this happens at this point, well, the first click and other interactions, those 3 other interactions together. Look, see? Oh, it says, hey, this is mine. Well, the child also taps on his hand and says, this is mine. He keeps one for himself. That's the initial interaction. If during the comprehensive period you both had several interactions, and if you only had one in between, well, first and last and linear, everything is the same. It doesn't matter what the less correct duration says. It says, hey, this isn't for you guys, this is for me, and claims it for himself. Linear also says to be friendly with each other, saying, in the conversion window, let's divide it among ourselves, maksam, which is exactly what I told you. In data-driven scenarios, it might be more complex. You might even learn more lessons from this. It assigns itself to those interactions. As far as you can see, the one at the end, if this is a manager, the final one, now it has divided it equally. It divides it this way, the closer to the end. It gets divided this way. The closer it gets to convergence, the more it does. In linear, we will also have a balanced division. Guys, in this video, we got familiar with the definition of conversion tracking and the evolution of modern conversion, as well as conversion delay in general. In the next video, we will proceed to implement conversion tracking on the dashboard together.